Welcome to this presentation on my student Henry. Thank you for joining me. As you know, Henry is 10 years old and is in my Year 4 class at present. Henry was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder in kindergarten and has been attending this school ever since. The main concerns with Henry starting school were about his developmental delays and additional needs and how he and his family would be supported in a holistic and proactive way to develop his self-management skills and work with his emotions, as the anxiety Henry experiences interferes with his learning and participation. We have an amazing team of people supporting Henry in partnership with his mother Jade to ensure that we are working with Henry's strengths and meeting his additional needs, and that he is engaged and progresses in his learning, feels included, and is happy at school. First, let's look at classroom organisation, where I discuss how my classroom is managed to be inclusive and supportive for Henry. I create an inclusive and supportive learning environment that Henry can participate in on the same basis as all other students. I do this through creating an inclusive classroom culture and through applying the Universal Design for Learning framework. The Australian Alliance for Inclusive Education states that inclusion is when all students are included in classroom participation all day, every day, that all students work in naturally supportive, flexible structures and groupings with other students regardless of individual ability, and all students are valued as full members of the school community, developing meaningful social relationships with peers and able to participate in all aspects of the life of the school. The way we use words to communicate with or about others can have a huge impact on people's lives, and I use inclusive language in the classroom, using person first language when speaking about Henry with other staff, and avoiding ableist language, which is crucial. The principles of the Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, guide me as a teacher to ensure that I am engaging Henry, presenting the content in multiple ways that are accessible to him, and giving him opportunities to demonstrate his learning and understanding. I will discuss more about engagement and strategies on the following slides. The Melbourne Declaration on Educational Goals for Young Australians states that all young Australians should be successful learners, and for this to be achieved, educators need to provide personalised learning that aims to fulfil the diverse capabilities of each student. To achieve this, effective teachers must plan how to best respond to the needs and interests of their students. Engaging Henry's interests and the interests of all students in my classroom is fundamental for success in learning and building on student strengths. Henry's biggest challenge is anxiety, and in the context of learning, his anxiety becomes most prominent when he doesn't understand or can't relate to a topic. Therefore, I make sure that I adapt to Henry's learning style and draw on his experiences. Henry engages well through visuals, which are essential to each lesson. They allow him to focus better and process instructions and reduce his anxiety. They show clearly what is expected during the lesson, which avoids frustration, and they are used at home for Henry as well as school to keep consistency and familiarity. They are also excellent for all students to support them. Henry loves bike riding, fishing, Lego, and complex puzzles, and when he's interested in something, he becomes very focused and engaged, which is one of his strengths. He also loves maths, and I discuss a specific lesson related to this in a later slide. I want to promote independence as much as possible with Henry, and displaying a daily visual schedule promotes this as he knows what to do next. The Australian Institute for Teaching and School Leadership Spotlight on Inclusive Education discusses effective teaching practice for students who have difficulty with self-regulation. I use many strategies to provide learning opportunities at Henry's development level which benefit him, including giving clear and simple instructions, breaking large tasks down into smaller steps, and when I notice that Henry is struggling, I follow a more challenging activity with one that I know he is more able to apply self-regulation to, so he feels a sense of achievement as well as being challenged. Henry and I have agreed on visual signals that he can give throughout a lesson to ask for extra support and show that he understands so he can work independently. An iPad app is used as an assistive technology where Henry can non-verbally communicate. As a teacher, I use direct language and choose specific verbs and nouns that are easily understood to direct student learning, and I also pre-teach vocabulary. I do this with visuals, using the word in different contexts, and then we do an activity or several activities to practice using the word to scaffold learning. I include Henry's interests and strengths so he connects with new vocabulary and puts it into practice. And finally, questioning is a strategy I use to check for understanding, which gives me information about where he is up to in his learning and whether I need to adjust instructions. An example of how I scaffold and differentiate for Henry is an outline of a numeracy lesson. This aligns with the Akara strand of measurement and geometry, location and transformation. It uses an online grid map to locate certain reference points on the grid. Students follow prompts to locate places on the map, then create their own grid map. The New South Wales Department of Education provide an excellent planning tool using the UDL, which I used for this lesson, to include examples for Henry to connect his learning with his interests. I also make sure the lesson provides options to allow Henry to access and understand the content. This is which is multiple ways for representation. Then I include tools that I can use to support Henry to demonstrate his learning, which is action and expression. This lesson engages Henry through connecting with his interests, and I clarify vocabulary and symbols and set a specific learning goal with Henry so he knows what he is doing, which is using simple scales, legends, and directions to interpret information contained in basic maps. We discuss what he wants his map to look like before beginning the activity, and he can use headphones to avoid overstimulation from classroom noise. This lesson is broken down into small steps, which are shown visually so that he can refer back to them. I use this table of reasonable adjustments aligned with the NCCD to show the level of adjustment, typical adjustment, and then a description of the adjustment I use specifically for Henry. This is shared with Henry's learning support team to monitor and change his goals according to his development. Collaboration and consultation between Henry's support team, which I'll show on the next slide, are vital in creating a successful learning and school experience for Henry. Tancredi et al. In their chapter on collaboration in inclusive education state that high-quality professional collaboration is fundamental to students having access to high-quality learning, social and well-being experiences at school, and are particularly important for students with disability and additional learning and support needs. Consultation under the Disability Standards for Education means that as an educator, I must consult through talking with Henry and his mother and the rest of his support team to determine the adjustments needed for him to overcome barriers related to ASD. Case conferences between us are undertaken 2 to 3 times a term to address pragmatics, social, behavioural and learning goals, and to review and amend them if needed. It's ongoing, and records are kept of the meetings to refer back to and check progress in his development. The process of consultation is essential to determine the adjustments required for Henry, and as stated by Foreman and Arthur Kelly, we must ensure that adjustments are reasonable by taking into account Henry's learning needs and balancing the needs of everyone involved. Henry's support team consists of core members, which include myself and his classroom teacher, our assistant principal, and our learning and support teacher. The other core member is Jade, Henry's mother. The specialist expertise are his occupational therapist and psychologist, who he visits regularly. Further contributors are the school's curriculum support team and the sensory room support team, who do an amazing job of ensuring that Henry gets the sensory time he needs during school and that his learning needs are met through adjusting curriculum content. Consultation consists of the case conferences between us to discuss and review Henry's individual support plan. In addition to this formal process, myself, the assistant principal, and Henry's mother are in regular contact through playground conversations, texts, and emails to report on how Henry operates throughout the day and week. These partnerships are successful for Henry's school experience and the school's non-judgmental and supportive approach to families, supported by the school's policies about fair participation, provide a network of positive support. This concludes my introduction to my student Henry. Thank you for listening. I hope you gain some important knowledge and inspiration about how Henry supported through inclusion and diversity in the classroom and school community to support him with autism.